Hey guys, I'm Jacinta Robinson and welcome to the Fearlss podcast, where I interview athletes who achieve incredible things. Today's guest is a 400 meter sprinter. She represented Australia in the Rio Olympics in the 4x4 women's relay. On the podcast today, we talk about training, nutrition, work-life balance. She's also a physio, so she talks about the common problems that she sees in the running industry. I'd like to welcome Caitlinn Sargent-Jones. Hey guys, so I've got an exciting athlete on the podcast today. She represented Rio in 2016 in the 400 meter relay. Is that correct, Caitlinn?
Yep.
So how did you find being surrounded in like that moment, ready to race? What were the feelings?
I think just excitement at that point. Like there's a lot of work that goes into being on an Olympic team, and especially for me, like there was a lot of, will I be on the team? Will I not be on the team? Waiting for that last minute. The very final selection for the team, came maybe like 2 weeks before we had to be on the plane. So I was pretty sure I'd be on the team, but you wanted that piece of paper to know for sure, to kind of, that's every athlete's kind of childhood dream is to be on that Olympic team. I'd run for Australia in other competitions before, but Olympics is just like kind of next level, like fairy tale stuff. So by the time the 4x4 comes around, which is, right at the end of the program, we've been sitting around waiting, seeing everyone else, like, doing these amazing things. So and then even on the day of it, I think our race was like 10:30 at night or something. So even during the day, we're waiting and waiting. So by the time we actually got out into the venue, it was just surreal. And I think the pole vault was on that night, and Brazil had like a medal prospect in that. So the stadium was packed out, and it was just like incredible atmosphere, like so much noise, so much volume, and just like. Even now, like I get kind of like goosebumps just talking about it. And, for us, we went into that competition ranked, our relay team were 14th or 15th or something, but we set ourselves the goals of making the final, so coming in the top 8. And we managed to run like a 2-second PB as a team and somehow pull that off. So, and which meant we got to have, another go around the next night in the final. So that was pretty special, I think, being able to come together as a team and really run, everyone absolutely run out of their skin, like to their best, for ourselves, but also for one another, and get to that goal of being an Olympic finalist was, pretty special. Yeah,
that's incredible. And then what did you place in the second time that you ran around?
So we came 8th, so which I think the age reported as coming last. So it's the harsh nature of sports journalism.
What speed did you guys finish that in?
Yeah, so I think, and that was the funny thing is everyone ran a bit slower on that second night, and the time we had
You're probably so excited because you got a PB.
Right, so the time we ran in the heat, if we'd run that the second night, that actually would have won us a bronze medal. So there was like that bittersweet moment, but obviously, across the board it must have been, fatigue across all the teams and, potentially different conditions that night. So everyone ran slower, but we ran in the heat, we ran 3:25.7. And then I think we ran about 3:27 low in the final. So we did run slower the second night, but everyone did kind of across the board.
That's fast.
But yeah, I think, going into it, we hadn't run quicker than 3:28. So, that was just ridiculous as far as we were concerned. So, and it was literally just everyone being absolutely on their A game, bringing like their probably lifetime best to that race when it mattered. Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. And like, let's just say like you do have the race, right? How long are you meant to rest after that? Like, because if you're going as hard and as full on as you can to come back the second day, that would be quite demanding on the body.
Yeah, it is. And I think, standardly we have in the 4x4 we'll have heat and then a final the next day, so usually a 24-hour turnaround, and in the individual 400 it's often heat in a morning session and then a semi-final evening session of the next day, so about a 36-hour turnaround, and then the 400 final will be another 24 hours after that. So especially for, we had 2 girls in our relay team that had made the semi-finals, so they'd run a 400, had a day rest, run a 400, and then had maybe 2 days off, and then they were backing up to run their third 400 of the week already in that heat. So it's pretty rough on the body. And I think for us, like I know for me personally, by the time we, warmed down, try to ice bath, get back to the village, get some food in. It was already like midnight, 1 a.m. And then, you know, we've just like ticked off this massive like life goal. So just buzzing and, you know, like trying to put your phone away, but there's just like thousands of messages on there and just trying to calm yourself down and come down off that to try and actually get to sleep and get some rest and recovery. So, you know, I think all those things probably, you know, played a bit of a role in the fact that we didn't, you know, back up quite as well the next day. But yeah, it is tough on your body. And, you know, but we know, you kind of know that timetable going into it, and you just got to try and prepare for that in training. You know, we've had times where we'll try and do 2 really big days back to back in training, and not something to be doing all the time because you lay yourself out flat and, you know, injure yourself, that sort of thing. But getting a little bit of that just hardness in your legs of being able to back up hard days one after another. And
do the 4 of you train together or do you train separately?
Yeah, so we all just do our own thing. We're all pretty much in different 400 meter squads all across the country. So that team that ran in Rio, we had 2 girls from New South Wales, 1 Vic, and then myself. So yeah, we just, you know, do our own thing and then come together as a team at the right time.
Wow. How do you know that you're going to like gel together? Like,
yeah, I mean,
are you all passing with the left or like...
Yeah, I mean, there's, at this point though, like a kind of core group of us that essentially the relay team is whoever the 6 fastest girls are in Australia in that year. So it does change and ebb and flow as people kind of juniors come through and people retire and people get injured and that sort of thing. So it does change, but kind of from 2014 through to 2018, we had a really good chunk there where Annalise and Morgan and I were kind of like these 3 central people, and then we had a few people kind of coming in and out, but there was the 3 of us that were together for 4 years. Morgan's now stepped up to 800, so it's changed a little bit, but yeah, we all got on really well. I think it was probably when Morgan first came into the team, she was a little bit immature, and we would both agree that we didn't get on the best, but and that's the thing, is like you're not always going to be best mates with everyone that's on the team, and you kind of just like put that aside and yeah, perform to your best and just get along as best you can to get the results you need. And, you know, over the time that we have been forced to spend together anyway, like Morgan and I are really good friends now. So, you know, some of it's, you just got to grin and bear it. And then some of it's also, you know, talk about those, you know, harrowing experiences bring people together and, you know, life-changing experiences like that bring people together as well. So yeah, being able to achieve really awesome things together is also like, that's a memory that I'll share with those 3 girls forever. So we kind of have like a bit of a special bond in that way, I guess. Yeah, no, that's lovely. So how did you get into running? Like, were you doing a 400 meter when you were young? Like, were you doing little athletics or? Yeah, it's funny when anytime you make an Australian team, the little athletics are always like, oh, so like, which club did you go to? Because, you know, I'm like, I actually never did little athletics. Like, I have an older brother, so I played AFL. Like, I started out in Auskick and played through to under 10s with Kenmore Bears junior AFL club. And then that was kind of like, started doing athletics at school, kind of around that grade 4-5 age. And also that's when the AFL started getting a lot more contact. And like there was no AFLW back then. So this was me just playing with the boys. And so I wasn't super keen to that. They weren't really sure. The boys weren't really sure. Like, are we allowed to tackle her? Is that okay? Like, I don't know if you meant to like hit girls kind of thing. So I kind of transitioned out of AFL at that point and into athletics. And I just went and joined just doing like some after school programs that are run out at UQ track. Yeah. So that would have been, when I was in like grade 4 or 5, kind of just, and then, to be honest, I was more of a high jumper to start with as well. And then as I got older, I just kind of like outgrew those programs and moved across to training with my coach that I'm still with now, Eric Brown. So, and it was quite funny. I actually remember doing like a holiday clinic, and they brought different coaches in on the holiday clinics, and there was like this crazy old man that was coaching us, and he was like, you look like you'd be a good 400 meter runner one day. I was like, okay, whatever. Anyway, like flash forward 3 years from there, and like he's my coach, and he's taken me from having never run a 400 when I was 12, 13 to like probably about the 4th or 5th 400 I ran, I like won a silver medal at under 18 state champs as like a 14-year-old or something like that. So he definitely knew what he was talking about. And and yeah, it's been like a pretty awesome like relationship that we've like I've basically grown up under his coaching. So that's been really cool to have him take me from someone who was like, the goal was to, you know, make state championships for track event, and then make a state champs final, and then make the Queensland team, and then like going just through those steps of like win a medal at nationals age group, and then make, you know, open nationals, and then on to like making Australian junior teams and then Australian senior teams. And he's kind of just like guided me through all of that. So it's been really really awesome like journey together.
Yeah, for you and for him, because him seeing like you're going to be good, and now you're actually the best. That's cool.
Yeah.
So after school, like then what happens? You've got work going on at that stage. Is that correct? And then are you competing? And
yeah, so straight out of school, I went straight into university, studying physiotherapy, and it's a pretty full on degree. It's like pretty much like 8 till 4 or 5 days a week, lots of contact hours and lots of practical. So not like couldn't stay at home and just watch lectures online. There's like hands-on prac classes I needed to be there for.
Yeah.
So I mean that was pretty full on time, but you know it worked out really well. Like in terms of my journey, like I have a lot to thank UQ for, like having facilities of a gym and a track on campus. So I would literally like go to anatomy lecture in the morning, run off to the gym, like do a session, come back, go to a lecture, and be like, okay, I'm going again. And being like having those facilities all on campus just made life so much easier. You know, just cut travel time out. If we had a 2-hour gap in the middle of the day, I was like, cool, I can fit this in. So that was really beneficial, fitting that in. And then even, like in second year, I took 3 or 4 weeks off semester to go and compete at World Uni Games and then at World Championships. So, and they were really good about that. I just, you know, had an exam to sit or something. Just like, I'll just sit there when I get back. And I was like, oh, I'm in Korea. I'll come back later. And
did you find that hard to train and to study?
I mean, there's definitely challenges, and especially things like when you're away and you're in an athlete village and you're like 19 and Usain Bolt's like eating dinner 2 tables over, and you're like, okay, I need to like focus. You're like, I've got to go and listen to my physiology lecture. I've got important things to do. So I think trying to just bring that focus and discipline to making sure I didn't fall behind when I wasn't physically at uni was a challenge. But I think for me, like I grew up in a house where like education was really important, and that kind of always came first. But I think the other thing for me was that, you know, even when I was busy in exam block, I always like didn't sacrifice training either. It was, and I knew people that it's like they were studying from like 5 a.m. till 8 p.m. and I was just like, I'm just not efficient if I do that. So I'd kind of like map my day out, and there's always time in there for training. And, you know, it was a really great way to go and clear your head, do something different, like, you know, give your brain a bit of a break, and then you can come back and be more efficient in the way that you study. So I think for me, like, yeah, obviously it's difficult fitting it all in, but it was still like, I can't imagine doing it any other way, because that's just, I don't know, that's just how I studied through school, and that is just what makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like I've done it too as well, like where you, whatever it may be, work, study, where you do a block and then it's like you have this escape.
Yeah.
And then it's like, woo, go do that.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you do more work. And I believe you are more efficient because you feel refreshed and you're ready to go again.
Yeah.
And you can learn more from, like, you're there, you're tuned in. You're not like, oh my God, this is going on forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. And then, so from there, you're now doing professional, like full-time running as well, like training for the Olympics, is that?
Yeah, so pretty much since I finished school, I've been, you know, training like on a similar training schedule to what I'm on now. So we do 3
plus working.
Yeah, so when I was at uni, I just did a little bit of like athletics coaching on the side. And then since graduating uni, I've gone into not quite full-time work. So I work 30 to 32 hours a week as a private practice physiotherapist. And we fit in 3 track sessions, actually on the track, 2 like road running sessions, 2 gym sessions, and then a like general strength and conditioning, aerobic conditioning session as well.
So how often are you, how's the stint of training?
Yeah.
Like, are we talking like half an hour or an hour? Like, what are we talking about?
Most days are, so Friday's rest day, but every other day is usually, Sundays are a little bit shorter, but most of the other days are around about the 2-hour mark. Yeah.
Right. So you would have to really fuel yourself for this.
Yeah.
What do you eat?
I mean, a lot of things. I think, when I was growing up, mum was like, oh my goodness, like how I can't afford to keep you.
I think most parents think that.
Yeah. Like growing child plus that on top.
Plus the extra.
Yeah. And I'm notorious at work if there's like food, like if there's like food comes into the clinic or like there's, treats at lunch or whatever, it's like, I'm eating double of what everyone else is eating. So,
is that because you are burning so much off during your training sessions?
Yeah. And then obviously I've got like as a sprinter as well, like with decent muscle mass, which is obviously just like high metabolic rate kind of at rest. And then I guess even compared to other athletes, like when I'm at work, like I'm on my feet all day as well. So, I'm kind of, I don't sit still a lot.
Yeah.
I'm moving around quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I checked out your Instagram and I've seen some green things in there. Are you vegan?
Not exclusively, no. So I've been playing around with my diet a little bit of late. So I did a stint of like full strict vegan, and I really I struggled to get enough fat into my diet, and my cholesterol was like below normal levels.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, oh. So like a lot of my other stuff that,
you need to have avocado.
Yeah, just like every meal, just like a whole avocado. I was like, I can't afford that. I've got a mortgage. But yeah, and so I, had blood tests done, and a lot of stuff that, people tend to get worried about was actually not too, like things like iron are actually quite good. So I'm just having a little bit of like fish or seafood, just to help out with like those really good fatty acids. But otherwise, yeah, pretty much following like a plant-based diet at the moment. Yeah.
You should incorporate hemp seeds because it has like, the 3, 6 and 9.
I know. I get really worried about like, it's theoretically fine, but I just get stressed about like our anti-doping testing because like all like marijuana obviously is like a banned substance. And so I'm like, I know it's not the same thing. Like I'm sure it's fine, but I'm just like, I'm so paranoid about like anti-doping, and like you never know when ASADA are going to knock on your door and ask you to do a test. So I'm just like, yeah, just paranoid about like supplements and any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be challenging. Like I think someone was telling me you can't have creatine. Is that right?
So I mean, essentially like the ASADA policy is they recommend that you don't take any supplements because supplement industry in Australia is not particularly well regulated, and they can say they don't have to list absolutely everything that's in the supplement. And so there might be things in there that you're not intending to take, but you accidentally are, which for the general population is obviously like not ideal, but it's not really the worst case. Like it's not that bad. Whereas for us, that could mean that if it's contaminated, because if they make it on the same processing material that they've also made a pre-workout that has a stimulant in it, or whatever, or a muscle bulk or whatever it is, and it's got like some human growth hormone or whatever is in it, and then that cross-contaminates and you end up with a positive test. So there is a process now. There's a range, like there's companies like Informed Sport, and people can companies can subscribe to that, where they batch test and they basically guarantee that that supplement is banned substance free. So there are a couple of creatines that are on that Informed Sport list. So it just means they're harder to find and more expensive.
Yeah. So do you take protein then for that reason? Like you can't?
Yeah, so for a long time I just took no protein powder because it was just like too high risk. But since Informed Sport's come through, and there's that like extra, like obviously nothing's 100% guarantee, but that gives you a lot more kind of confidence and clarity around like what's actually in these supplements and substances. So yeah, there's a I'm trying to think. The one that I've been using is a UK brand. I think it's called HealthSpan. It's a vegan protein powder from and it comes from like brown rice and pea and a few different substances, and it's got like a B12 supplement in it as well.
Oh.
So I mean, it doesn't have chickpeas in it, but it kind of tastes like chickpeas somehow. So I'm still wrapping my head around the flavor. But yeah, no, it's good. Nutritionally, it's good.
Yeah. Like I think like with the worry about like the different things that are in the supplement, that would be quite challenging for you. Like I would be freaked out as well. I would be like, no, I don't know about that. So on an average day, let's say, how many calories would you be eating?
I honestly have no idea. I've just never calorie counted, so I don't know, and it's hard to even say like what's a typical day for me. I guess like it depends what time of day I'm training and all that sort of thing. So
have you never done anything kind of strict for the Olympics?
Wow. Partially I think I'm just genetically blessed. Relatively, like it's relatively easy for me to keep a low body fat. So I'm pretty much, I guess, along almost like intuitive eating of like, yeah, I want to eat healthy, nutritious foods. Like when you've smashed your body, and like I don't want to eat KFC. Like I want to eat healthy, nutritious food. I'm like, that makes me want to vomit. No, thank you.
Yeah.
But then it's like, yeah, if I want to have some cake or I want to have some ice cream or whatever it might be, it's like, yeah, that fits in like everything kind of in moderation, I guess. So I've never counted calories. I honestly couldn't tell you what I eat, like what I'm consuming in a day.
Yeah.
For me, it's just about, picking the right nutritious foods, fueling up on that stuff. And then, if you want to,
have you noticed like anything like before, after, like once you've done training helps you either with recovery or with like enhancing your performance?
Yeah, I think recovery wise is just as much around like just making sure you get that fuel in a good time frame. So just being organized and strict around like making sure you get some fuel on board kind of within that 30
And would
60.
you have like a protein sort of?
Yeah, so on like a Monday and a Wednesday when I kind of like train in the afternoon, but it's still going to be a bit of a gap till dinner time, then I'll definitely fuel up with protein shake like before I leave the track and go home. And then Tuesday, Thursday where I kind of get up, go to the gym and then come home and get ready before I go to work, then I'll just have essentially like a breakfast. So like in the past would have been like omelette, and now I just have like a tofu scramble on, like a really good wholemeal or like sourdough bread kind of thing. Yeah.
So are you training fasted then?
No, so I'll usually have, at the moment I'm having just like not a lot in the morning because I'm usually doing a road run and then going to the gym, and I just don't like too much sitting in my gut when I go out and run. But I also don't want to have to get up too early just to eat. So I'm having just like an apple with peanut butter usually for breakfast in the morning.
Yum.
Yeah.
What about coffee? Do you have coffee at all?
Yes. We have, oh yes. My husband roasts our coffee beans. So coffee is like, it's its own little like section of our house pretty much. Yeah. So yeah, I try to keep my caffeine relatively low because I do use caffeine as a supplement when I'm competing. So, and then when I do that, I'm just taking like something like a Revi's, which is just literally just, again, it's an Informed Sport product. It's just caffeine in like a little like strip on your tongue.
Oh, okay.
It's artificial and it doesn't taste very good, but gets the job done. And you know exactly how much you're getting. So, because with the coffee, obviously, like different beans and different dosages, like you don't know
and
exactly.
how big's a teaspoon and
Exactly. So the Revi's is like, you just know, I'm like 2 strips is, 80 milligrams. That's the right amount for my body weight and how I process caffeine. So, and I can easily just pop that in my bag wherever I'm traveling and competing in the world.
Do most athletes do that?
I think a fair few use caffeine, and there's Revi's, and then some people just use like no dose, just the tablets. And then some people like to go down, like the Red Bull path, which I don't know, just like it's a lot of liquid to sit in your stomach, and it's a lot of like sugar and stuff as well that I just felt like I didn't need. So just the straight caffeine was a better, like I was taking before things like Revi's came out, I was having Red Bull and I was just like, this doesn't feel good. Like, I don't know about this. But definitely the caffeine is useful. It's, kind of improves your like kind of opens up your airways a bit, so you get better oxygen in, and kind of improved sustained effort, so like almost like an improved endurance.
Yeah, it's just like amplifies the performance a bit.
Yeah, as well as obviously it's like a little bit of a stimulant, so it just gives you a little bit of that. I mean, usually you have enough of that with the nerves anyway, but gives you that little bit of an edge, I guess.
you're like ready.
Yeah. So I try to not have too much other like caffeine in my diet otherwise, so I try to just stick to like 1 double shot coffee a day. My husband has like 3 or more, and I'm trying to cut him down before he has a heart attack. But yeah, so I tend to do sometimes I do a long black. I tend to do more of like a flat white type thing, which at the moment I'm doing on like almond milk.
Yeah. I reduced, like I was having so much coffee and I reduced it just for the fact that I was getting tired at night, like falling asleep, and I was like, man, I must be smashing my adrenal gland. So I completely got it out.
Yeah.
And then I had to have 1 coffee and I was just like, woo! I was like, holy hell, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is amazing how it just instantly gives you that kick.
Yeah.
But with the Red Bull and that, I was just even crazier compared to a coffee.
Yeah, well, I guess it must just be it's got the added like sugar, and some of those things have even like guarana and a few other kind of like natural like uppers in them or like stimulants. So yeah, I think, and for me, like the main thing for me was like, it's 250 mils. Like you had to smash that, and to get the timing right, it was basically like drink that and then literally start your warm up, and it's just like bouncing around in my gut, and you already have like a bit of a nervous tummy, you know, lining up for a big meet. So that, yeah, I was pretty happy to see the end of that.
Do you get like do you go to the toilet like before you go out? Like I reckon I get a nervous wee or something.
Yeah. There's always one or two girls. It's like, so we have our call room. Usually it's about 20 minutes. You've got to turn up before the actual start time of the event. And there's always, you know, the few girls that need to like go to the toilet in the middle of that. I just like to be like calm and like not need to be anywhere in that time that I'm in the call room, but definitely like during my warm up, I'm in and out of the bathroom. I also just want to feel like really light and not like I'm carrying around any unnecessary weight. So just like anything in my system that doesn't need to be there, is like get rid of it.
Yeah.
I just carry my own body weight around the track. So yeah. And even like for big training sessions, like you just like empty everything out.
Yeah. Get it out.
Get it out. Yep.
So when you're in that like room, are you visualizing how you want the race to go or your performance? Do you think about that?
That's definitely part of my warm up. Trying to, I guess, just like really, like visualize parts of my race and really just connect to what am I meant to be thinking about. So the work that I do with my sports psychologist is just around having like one or two really simple key things that are my cues to focus on, kind of for me, basically per 100. That's kind of how I break the race down, is into 100-meter chunks. And so it's just about like, what does that look like? And then like, what am I thinking about at that point in my race? And just like really committing to that. It's very easy, you know, to get dragged into what other people are doing in their race, and like, oh, that person, like, should I go with that person? Or that person, like, I've caught up to them too quickly, all that sort of stuff. So just trying to like cut all of that noise out, and not listen to all of that stuff that your brain wants to tell you, and just focus on like the important stuff, which is, like this is, you know, my rhythm or my arm drive or my like focusing on my stride pattern, all that sort of thing. So just, making sure I've just like got that really clear in my head so I can commit to it when I need to. Yeah.
During the race, like let's just say what you're saying, you broke it down into 100 meters. What are you thinking? Like, are you like, yep, done 100. Do you think I got to turn it up a notch, or is it going so quick that you just can't really capture that thinking?
Yeah, I often joke, like my sports psych and I, we often joke around, it's ridiculous how many thoughts you can have in a race, right? Like it's only 52 seconds. It's completely ridiculous how many thoughts you can have even just in like 150-meter section of that race. So in a good race, you're just thinking about the things you're meant to be thinking about. But yeah, it's certainly, for me, it's more around, just trying to tune out to what other people are doing. So I know what I'm meant to be thinking about. It's like, okay, so this first 100, I'm like trying to, you know, get out of the blocks well and accelerate and set myself up.
Are you the first runner?
Oh, so if I'm running, it's a bit different, like running a relay versus an individual. Okay. So, I mean, because in the relay there's a little bit of positioning that comes into play. So where you cross through the 200 meter, if you're third or fourth runner, where you cross at the 200, like the placing that you're in is the order that your outgoing runner will then stand to receive the baton. So, and the closer they are to the infield, the shorter distance you have to run, right? So you want to try and get through that 200 in a good position. Like you don't want to burn all your energy just to get there, but you also don't want to go through there in sixth and have to run wide to get your baton out to your next runner. So there's a little bit of tactics that have to come in like on the fly in a relay. Yeah. And, you know, and someone, you might be trying to accelerate and then someone kind of makes you run wide. And so you're like, okay, so like, let's not do that now. Let's just sit and wait until they've either in front or behind, and then you can move. So there's a little bit more tactics to it that you've got to just...
Wow, like car racing a little bit. Like,
yeah, because you don't want to have to try, like you might want to, like for me, I try to really accelerate around the top bend, but if someone's on my inside and pushing me out, like especially around the bend, that's going to make me have to run further. So you got to like counterbalance and just work out like, is it worth it to run that little bit extra, or do I kind of wait and maybe kick a little bit later than I might normally, and just trying to work all that stuff out.
And then what about solo? Like what you're just saying.
Yeah, so solo is a lot easier because it's like
it's just you.
Just get in your lane and just do your thing.
Yeah.
And it is. I think it's also easy because you are in your lane. You kind of can almost like put those blinkers on. It's just like between that white line and that white line. That's all I need to think about. Whereas in the relay, like obviously after second runner, like you're all bunched up into lane one kind of thing, and there are girls right up in your space, and they might be elbowing or pushing you in the back, or and it's
they really push you.
Yeah, we had. I think I normally do okay, but we definitely had a race where Annalise just got. You could see it on the big screen. This girl just like two hands like shoved her in the back, like straight at the 200 meter mark, and she was mortified because she like swore because she was so caught off guard. It's like, my grandma would have seen that. She was mortified, but she did well just to keep her feet, and you're like, well, that's like half a second right there. So it can be 4x4 is definitely a contact sport.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, I think individual 400 is definitely easier. There's less distractions. Like it's just there's people around you running, but you can it's much easier to just focus on what you're doing. And it's like, I know the way, this is the way for me to run the fastest 400 I can. So it doesn't really matter what anyone else is doing. Just get in and do your job. Yeah.
And is that every time you hit over 100 meters, you crank it up a little bit, or do you go a little bit faster, out of the gate? And then the reason why I ask is because I remember when I was in athletics and I was like, okay, and I tried a few different things. I'd go as fast as I can, so I was in front, to be intimidating, and then see if I could maintain that. And then every time I saw them on the edge, then that kind of propelled me forward. And then I always at the end had this, I don't know where it came from, but just this extra oomph to get me over, where I've tried the opposite to see if not go as hard at the start and then try and crank it up a little bit more. And it just didn't work for me. I had to go
and I think that's the funny thing is, different race plans just work for different people. So, which is again to the argument of just ignore what anyone else is doing, because, and even for myself, how I ran a 400 when I was 21 is not how I run a 400 now. When I was younger, my top speed was really my asset. I had the fastest 100 meters of any of the girls I was racing by a substantial chunk. And now as I get older, my fast twitch fibers aren't quite so fresh. And so, but I have a lot of training years behind me and a lot more strength and endurance in my legs. So before, where I was probably had a reputation for just running like a nutcase through the first 200, and realistically probably actually running about a 320 and then just holding on for dear life. In the last season or two, been playing around a lot more with going out a little bit, and the funny thing is we're talking 0.5, half a second, and that can be really quite difficult to calibrate that difference. But going out in a 24 flat versus a 24 and a half is a completely different ball game. And again, 24.5 versus 25.0, they're just very different in terms of, and I guess it's that in terms of the percentage of effort. So for me, my 200 meter PB is 23.8. So to run a 25 is really quite comfortable, but to run a 24.5 we're getting a lot closer to kind of what my 200 meter PB is. So that's then going to affect obviously what you can do in the next 200 meters. So there's a lot of finesse and playing around with that stuff, and unfortunately the best way to work it out is to race, and that's sometimes you end up with you're like, cool, I tried that, it did not work. Don't do that one again. But the good thing is, having done the work with my sports psych, is if you really commit to that race plan and you don't have the outcome you want, it's still it's not a lost cause. It's cool, well, I've learned something from that and I can actually take that away, and now I'm going to try a different race plan next time. Versus just if you don't focus on what you're meant to be focusing on it at the right times, you kind of get to the end of the race and you're like, well, that's a crappy time, but I don't really know why, and I don't know how to stop that from happening again. So it's as long as you can take something from the race, even if it's a slow time, as long as you can learn something from that, then it's not a waste of time. It's not a lost cause.
No, how you can improve.
Yeah.
So have you ever considered doing longer then? Like, would you ever go out and do like a 5K or 10K or?
So my coach made me open my season with an 800 last year, and I was not impressed with that. Like, it actually went okay.
How long did that take you?
I did it in 2:07.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but I was like, I'm not doing that again. And heaps of people have been like, you should, like, as you get older, like, go longer, like, step up the distance. I'm just like, no. And I say that because, like, all my favorite parts of training is like the short, fast stuff. So I'm like, it's not so much the racing. Like, I think 400 and 800 there's a lot of similarities. Like, they're definitely both just like lactic, like hard, painful events. But it's the stuff that I don't like is a much larger chunk of your training if you're doing 800. Yeah. And it's funny because my husband is a distance runner. So when he was competing, he competed in 3,000 meter steeplechase. So, you know, his Sunday long run's a 90-minute run and he does like 18K in that time. Yeah. So he's like, so when you finish competing, like, we can go for long runs together, right? Like 10K. I'm just like, mate, the farthest I've run is like 5K. Like, let me build up to this. So yeah, I think
you might enjoy. A friend of mine does like mountain racing, and she loves that lactic fast.
Yeah.
You might enjoy that.
Well, I think, I mean, I'm getting better at like slow control. I think the other thing is like, I'm not like, some people just naturally can pace, and they just have this like inbuilt kind of metronome, and they'd be like, this is 4:30 pace, this is 3-minute pace, like. That's just not me. So I would, you know, set out on a run on what felt like an easy pace, but wasn't really an easy pace. And so by the end of that 5K, I'm like working really hard and like running slow.
Yeah.
So, but as I get older, I'm getting better at pacing. So I think, you know, I don't think I would necessarily like compete over a different distance, but yeah, I don't necessarily intend to be like running on the track when I'm 40. So I'll probably graduate onto like the road stuff as I get a bit older, and it's probably a little bit kinder to my body.
Yeah, they do say like, and you see it often that the older people get, the more that they do get into that endurance. And I think it is because they are a bit wiser and they can know, like they understand, like you don't go as fast. It's about enjoying the journey rather than, whoa, let's go. So tell me, have you enjoyed your whole process of running, or has there been any periods during your running that you're like, nah, I'm over it? Because you've been doing it for quite a while now.
Yeah, I think like so I made the Australian junior team in 2010, and that was just a phenomenal experience. I remember just like coming away from that. I actually competed in the 100 meters at that, as well as the 4x1 and the 4x4 relay. And I remember just like walking out and running that 100-meter heat. And as I came back out of the tunnel, I could hear like one of my teammates, like I could distinctly hear my name. And it was just this amazing experience. And I kind of walked away from that being like whatever it takes, like I just want to do this as many times as I can. And luckily enough, you know, the next year I made World University Games for the 400. And it was kind of just like a funny changing of the guard. And so I got pulled up into the senior 4x4 team as well. So I guess that was kind of that weird, I went from very much thinking of myself as like a junior athlete to being like, oh, okay, like I'm at World Championships. Like I remember I got Steve Hooker to sign my training diary at Nationals that year. And then like 6 months later, I'm on a team with him. I'm like, well, this is embarrassing. He was very nice about that. But yeah, it was like these athletes that I saw as like, as like, these are my idols. I'm like, these are my teammates now. So that was kind of like a bit of a shift for me, I guess. And then, I just like, you know, as I was getting older and more mature, I was just kind of like doing PBs every year. In 2013 was a really great year for me. I went to World Uni Games. At World Uni Games, I ran the World Champs qualifier and got to run the individual 400. And I guess I had this expectation that like, cool, this is like, everything's coming up, Caitlinn, like just keep rolling on with this. Yeah. And then, so I went into 2014, which was a Commonwealth Games year. I essentially had the qualifying time. I just hadn't done it in the qualifying period, but I was like, cool, I know I can do it. Like I just got to do it and I'll be on the team, like easy. And like, and I didn't do it. I didn't run the qualifying time at the right, you know, within the period. You know, I got to run in the relay team and we came fourth. So we had a really good relay team. So it was still a good experience, but it was kind of like, oh, okay. And then like 2015, I like ran slower again than what I'd run the year before. And I think it became to a point where I don't necessarily think at the time I was aware of this. It was more just a sense of like I would go out to race and it was kind of like, well, let's see what happens today. And like not necessarily like literally having no idea how it was going to go. And I think, and so because of that, it felt like it was outside of my control. So it's like I was like, I'm doing all the training, and then when I race, it doesn't turn out how I want. So like what's happening? And felt like, like I couldn't do anything about it. So I think for me, like coming into 2016, like we made a few changes in training, and I managed to get my times a bit better, and obviously made the relay team for Rio again. Like what I really wanted to do was run in the individual as well, and running around trying to chasing this qualifying time and not getting it, and that's probably when I started doing a bit more work with the sports psychologist, and this idea of like, well, all you can do is like control the controllables. So it's like have a race plan and stick to it, and if it doesn't turn out how you want, then like go away and work on that. It's like either you're not using the correct race plan for you, or that race result is telling you that like, you might be training well, but you're obviously not doing the right training. So that I think shifted things a little bit, because it meant that it was like, okay, I'm lining up, I'm doing this race, and you're like, okay, that was a bit crap. That's not what I wanted. But now I can take that away and be like, well, I need to go and work on X, Y, Z. And so, and especially I think, and we talk a lot about like Brene Brown's work as well, and this idea of like, as an athlete, it takes that vulnerability and that courage to stand on that start line and truly commit to your race plan, because if it doesn't turn out well and it's like, I'm just not good enough. Like that's what that means, is like, and that doesn't feel nice to be like, I did my best today. I absolutely nailed my race plan. I committed to it 100%. And I ran a 53, not a 52. Like, so, and knowing that like, that's okay. Like you're still like a decent human being. That's not the only thing that there is to you. Like there's more to life than just running fast in circles. And so I think for me, it was this idea of, it's like not attaching your self-worth to your athletic performance, because that's like, you just keep shifting the goals when you do that. It's like, okay, well, I won the national title. Like what now? Like you just have to keep chasing the next thing, versus being like, no, my worth as a human being is like the people that I love, and the, all these other ways that I can contribute to the world, and all the cool things about my personality and my character. And I think that's the other thing is using athletics as a way of really expressing my character. So things that are important to me, like integrity and gratitude, like being able to use racing as a way to really like fuel that, and nurture that, rather than beating myself over the head with a stick because I didn't run the time I wanted to. It's like, okay, but what can we be grateful for in this moment? And you set out to do a race plan and you committed to it. So you did what you said you were going to do. So that's integrity. And I think that's really shifted like the way that I can approach racing, and made it so much more rewarding and valuable.
I think when you look at it's amazing that you can now see that, because I feel like that would be something that would happen to a lot of Olympians. Is that right? Like, or any sort of sport, like you would get sucked into that loop thinking that way. And I noticed that like the more that I study the greats and stuff like those people, I notice like that's what they do. Instead of thinking about like that's their thing, they're like, oh, okay, they've got to be a bit flexible, and they're looking at the positive. And because running might be your forever, like you might, I don't know, you might be a long jump, I don't know, or discus throw. You never know where it could guide you. So looking at changing your perspective and looking at the positive is such an amazing thing for you to, being so young, to look that way now, because that will help guide you further forward.
It's pretty funny. I think there's a quote in the movie Cool Runnings, but he says because it's like the coach, he obviously got kicked out of the Olympics for cheating, and he said, if you're not enough without a gold medal, you'll never be enough with one. And it's that idea that like, if you think it's like, I have to make that team, or I have to run this time, or I have to achieve blah to be good enough, like you've got the wrong perspective, and it's you'll get there, and that still won't fill the hole, and that still won't make you feel enough. So you need to like know your worth without that stuff. And because I'm not going to be an elite athlete forever. Like, I'm going to get old at some point and my body's not going to put up with that anymore. So it's about, it's like, what is my worth and how can I, the things that are important to me and the people that are important to me, how can I nurture that? And just, athletics is just an avenue for doing that.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. I love that. And you can apply that to anything, really.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is it then opens you up to like, okay, well, how do I do that in my relationships? How do I do that in my, work as a physio? Like, how can I nurture all of these things and be true to the values that I've said are important? How do I actually live them and not just talk about them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a gold nugget, everybody. Take that on board. So I'd love to know, like, with being in like the physio industry, what do you see is a common problem for people that are running? Like, is it that they haven't strengthened their knees or their ankles? What do you see?
I think like across the board, strength is probably just strength across the board is probably a big thing. A lot of runners, especially like generally what I see in clinic tends to be people who are doing more road running and they're mad for running and they love running, which is great, but they don't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
And so their poor little legs would really love it if they could do some strength work.
Does that mean like weight training, or do you mean body weight training but doing it in a strength way?
Yeah. So I think if you haven't done anything before, like body weight's completely fine. Because what I always, what I say to people is like essentially running is like single leg hop after single leg hop for an hour or half an hour, or depending however long you're running for. So like it's very simple, but it's a lot of load on your body. And if you don't have the strength in things like your glutes in particular to provide that hip stability, and then strength in things like your calves, that's when you are going to run into problems. Your glutes are going to get overloaded because the demand, what you're requiring of them, you're like basically asking them to function at like 100% or even more of their capacity, like every day. Yeah. Whereas if you can go and strength train and build their capacity, then when you go for a run, you're only asking them to work at 50% of their capacity. So I think, definitely like glute strength, people then end up with lower back, hip, knee probably comes up quite frequently. And then the other thing that comes up a lot is Achilles. So, and that can still be coming from higher up the chain as well. But the other one is, then just being strong enough in your calves, because a lot of that, the push off in terms of like your propulsion forwards comes from calves. And again, if you're not,
are you talking things like plantar fasciitis?
Yeah, so the Achilles comes down and inserts into your heel, but essentially then blends into the plantar fascia. So calves being tight can just be like give you calf pain, or even end up in a calf muscle strain or tear. Achilles tendonitis, tendinopathy, irritation, whatever you want to call it. And then, plantar fasciitis or plantar fasciopathy, depending your terminology. So, and that's generally often comes down to either feet not being strong enough or calves not being strong enough. So I think, and, the flip side is also that when things aren't strong enough, they then tend to get overloaded, so they get really tight. So when runners do sometimes just come and say, I just feel really tight through my hips all the time, it's often that, it's like, well, your glute muscles are really, really tight, and it's because they're having to work really hard because they're just not strong enough for what you're asking them to do.
Okay. And so like, I want to know like flat feet, because I've heard two debates. One is that it's bad and it's going to really, you struggle with running. Yeah. The second is it's just that the muscles underneath the feet haven't been activated. So all the other muscles had to, they've gone in like to overdrive to compensate from that. What's your opinion on people that have flat feet? Should they not run, or should they work on doing like recovery? Like, I don't know. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think some people get very passionate about this topic, so I don't want to offend anybody. I think like across the board, I think like, because there was definitely a period of time where it was essentially like anyone who had flat feet, you need orthotics. And there's an argument for some people probably do need a little bit of support. It's like, in a perfect world, yes, your muscles are doing the job of holding that arch in place. But if not, then an orthotic's a reasonable thing to at least support that until you can build that strength. So I think definitely foot strengthening is very helpful and useful. And I like grew up doing dance. So I've had very strong feet for all my life, and I've got quite high arches, but yeah, really strong and good control through like even all the little small muscles in my feet. So I've never really had too much issue with like foot injuries, that sort of thing, even though like the force that goes through our little feet in not supportive shoes on the track is very high. I think the other thing is like some people have flat feet, don't wear orthotics, don't strengthen their feet, and they're fine. Like sometimes I think, you know, if it's not broken, don't fix it as well. Like if that's your natural body shape, if your feet have always been like that and your body's used to it, like it's probably fine. Like your body adapts and learns how to manage that. So I definitely don't want to put someone in orthotics if their body seems to be managing okay as is. But certainly because the feet being flat can sometimes then cause like the knee to drop in, and they might get knee pain or hip pain or even just like issues through their calf. So if they're presenting with those issues, then you want to work out, okay, well, also, is it the foot creating those issues, or is it that they don't have good control through their hip or knee, and therefore the foot is getting loaded up as well? So you kind of like top down, bottom up, like, and try and really nut down like where, like really what is the cause of this, and then set about strengthening that or deloading it with an orthotic or something along those lines. But unfortunately, I think there's not a single like if you have flat feet then X. Like it's not as simple as just being able to say it's the same thing for every single person, unfortunately. Yeah. We love simple answers in this world, but most things are not as black and white.
Yeah, and because everyone's born differently, they might have wide feet, skinny feet, long feet, yeah. So seeing a professional is definitely the best thing.
Yeah. and I think a professional that's going to look at the whole picture and not just look at your feet. Like, look at your feet and at the very least look up to your hips, if not whole body.
And then also with the strengthening, so you mentioned that with the glutes, so if they do lots of glute strengthening, will that help to bring the legs running efficiently, like the knees and tracking in line correctly, or is there a little bit more to that?
I think, again, obviously it's a complex topic, but across the board, if I had to give like one thing for people to do, it would definitely be like that kind of glute strengthening work, as long as they are actually using their glutes. We know that glutes love to switch off and be lazy. Yeah. So as long as people can really like hone in on that and make sure that the glutes are actually switched on and doing their job, that should really help with stability through the hips, better control through the knees, and therefore better control through the ankles.
And would you say that's a mind to muscle, like really thinking about squeezing the glutes rather than going fast, slow down the movement a little bit more?
Yeah, it's definitely, and different cues make sense for different people. So some people can literally just think like switch your glutes on, and other people need a more, visual type cue. So often we talk about like imagining that if you're going to do a squat, for example, imagining that you're standing on a piece of paper and you're trying to split the paper in half just with your feet. And so that's really going to help people cue that like pushing away and really switching on those upper glutes that are going to help provide that hip stability. And some people really need like that visual cue. If they're really struggling, they can use something like, like a TheraBand or a resistance band around their knee to give them like that physical stimulus. So it's just about working out what works for you. But it's very much just about, getting the brain to talk to the glutes and the glutes to talk to the brain. And so it's a little, if you can do little bits often is really the ideal scenario. Yeah.
What I found interesting is when I wasn't so muscly, I couldn't understand what the hell was squeezing my muscle. And then as soon as I started building strength, I was like, oh yeah, I can feel that. I know what's going on. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, this is what dudes feel like, because they develop muscle usually pretty early. So for the ladies out there, I think sometimes that can be a little bit of confusion, like what you're saying. So I think cues are a great thing to look out for.
Yeah, and I think as well for people, like it just depends what you've done. Like as for physios, like we spend 4 years studying, which means we spend 4 years basically learning about our bodies and practicing all these things on each other. So we tend to have pretty good body awareness. But if you've not done a lot of sport in the past and you don't, and you're just not familiar with your body, it can be really difficult, and people are just like, I don't understand what you want me to do. And so it's just a matter of, we'll just systematically work through different cues in the clinic and say like, okay, that one does not work. And then I'm like, oh, that was worse than when you weren't thinking about anything. Like, definitely don't do that one. And then I'm like, that one, that's the one for you. and just working out like what works for that person, because everyone is different and has different experiences, and so different things just make sense for different people.
And would you say that, I want to know, what's your opinion on mobility, like increasing your flexibility through mobility exercises, or pure like a yin yoga where you hold something for 3 minutes? What do you recommend?
I would say I'm gonna choose option C that you didn't give me. My go-to when I'm giving exercise or homework for clients is usually like muscle releases. So it's probably closer to like a mobility exercise.
Or like where you have a ball.
Yeah. So we have a very large stash of lacrosse balls in our clinic. And so the way I describe it to people is often like if a muscle is tight, you can stretch it, which is probably something more like what a yin will do. But if you think of like a jelly snake, if you tie a knot in that jelly snake and then you stretch it, like that knot doesn't change, right? Then like everything around it kind of stretches out, but there's still that knot there. And so often if you can use like something like a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball or whatever else you got lying around the house, and release the trigger point, that will often like obviously release locally that tightness, but it often actually helps increase the flexibility of that whole muscle group. So especially something like hamstrings, like people say to me all the time, they're like, I keep stretching my hamstrings and they never get any better. Obviously, like there can be a multitude of reasons, and sometimes it's things to do with like them being tight through their back or their nerves being irritated, but I often say, okay, just stop stretching them for a little while. Just try trigger pointing them instead. And that's often more effective than trying to stretch them. So, yeah, I would, and that like hamstrings is a really good example of that, but across the board, I tend to recommend like muscle releases more so than stretching. Yeah.
And before, after exercising?
In perfect happy physio world, both. The argument being, so before is obviously going to give you the best kind of, I guess, give you your optimal, the amount of range of movement that you're going to get, which means that you're less likely to kind of irritate or aggravate anything during that session. So if you know you tend to be a bit tight in your shoulders and you can loosen some stuff off before you go and do overhead press, that's the ideal. But likewise, you've just gone and smashed your muscles and they're probably a little bit tight. So if you can do a little bit of that release work afterwards to help them recover is good. If you're only going to do one, I would probably say before.
Yeah. And would you say after like the trigger point as well? Or would you say more of like a stretch after? Yeah,
I think like trigger point afterwards is good as well. But that is probably where I do incorporate a little bit of more static stretching, or just like gentle general foam rolling after training. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, how can you tell if it's tight? Like you warmed up and you're like, ooh, and then it's like, well, it kind of wouldn't really feel tight. I know prior, like, because you feel a bit stiff going into whatever it is that you're going to do, but after, to me, what would make sense is just like, relaxing more the muscle and releasing it.
Yeah. I guess like in terms of what you'll feel is like once you start to put like a lacrosse ball or something on a muscle, especially if, something like back of your shoulder blade or into your glute, you'll feel those like knotty, gritty, gnarly bits. So even if generally like your hip might feel like it's moving better now that you've, been doing some deep squats or something like that, those tight muscle, like the individual trigger points in the glute, you'll definitely still be able to find them. And if you can't find them, then great, it means they're not there. You don't need to trigger point it. But yeah, like especially just in terms of more of like a winding down, like almost from a mental perspective, like a gentle stretch is not a bad way to finish a training session.
And would you say that a lot of people have, like, I would say maybe because low back, I hear this a lot. Do you reckon that is because they're not moving properly or like they've not warmed up correctly for the exercise, that therefore then their back takes over because they haven't got their glutes firing, and or is it individual?
Yeah, it's all like, at the end of the day, it always is very variable. But I think, part of it comes down to like our bodies are designed to move, and a lot of us spend a lot of the day quite stationary. And so if we're not in a good position, whatever it is that we're loading up is getting loaded up a lot. So if everyone could just be physios and walk around and be on their feet all day, that'd be great. Because I'm never in any one position for more than like 5 minutes. So my body, even if I'm in a position that's not great, I'm only there for a minute or two and then I get to move again. So I think part of it comes down to, people just being static in the same position for a long time. And so the same things are just getting loaded up and loaded up. Especially, most people walk into the clinic saying, I know I have terrible posture, but so I think that's definitely part of it. And then you get into a process where it's like the body starts to get a bit tight, and so then things aren't moving quite so well, and then it's like we know the glutes start to switch off, and so then the back muscles start to get work too hard, and it's kind of this flow on effect, and then the tighter things get, the worse they're moving, and so that's when you really want to try and kind of intervene and try and break that cycle before someone really gets an injury. And I think it comes down to
regular movement.
Moving often and moving in different ways, and we always just like to say your best position is your next position, so just keep moving.
Well, that's exciting. So, Caitlinn, tell us about what would be your advice for people, like when you were saying that sometimes with the race you can take it either way. Sometimes you could take it as a positive way, or could take it as a negative, but you want to try and turn it into a positive. What would be your advice for people out there that are trying to achieve something that is massive for them?
I mean, I think, I think it comes from, the first thing is to just know that just the fact that the way that Brene Brown talks about it is just the fact that you are in the arena. So you are being courageous, you're being vulnerable by trying something new, by trying to achieve something. That's massive in itself. So give yourself credit for that. And if anyone's passing judgment or passing comment, if they're not down in the dirt with you, their opinion does not matter.
Yeah.
And that, you might not achieve what you're trying to achieve. I think you have to go, we talk about this, you have to line up on that start line knowing that you might fail, in inverted commas, you might not get the outcome that you wanted. And it might feel a bit crappy, and that's okay. That's what makes us human. That's how you know that this thing's important to you and that it's worth pursuing, is that it matters enough to get upset about it. If you didn't care about it, then why are you doing it?
Yeah.
So I think, and knowing that even if it doesn't go how you wanted it to go, the skills and what you get to learn about yourself and what you get to nurture and grow through the process of trying to achieve that goal, that's just as important as actually being able to tick it off on a piece of paper. We all like that. We know our brain likes, closing loops, ticking boxes, that sort of stuff. As humans, we want to tick off that to-do list. And I think we can do that sometimes to our detriment, right? It's I want to tick off dual Olympian. I want to go to Tokyo. I want to tick that box. But it's who I become as a person and what I get to learn about myself and what I get to nurture on that journey of lining up and racing 7 weeks post hammy tear and running atrociously, but doing what I knew I needed to do, that's more valuable than just being able to than ticking that box.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love what you just said. I'm a bit speechless. Well, it's been lovely having you on the podcast. And for everybody that is listening, if you are here in Brisbane, where can they come and see you?
So I work at Barefoot Physiotherapy. So we're a beautiful little boutique private practice in Tennyson.
Oh, wonderful. So I'll be able to put that all on the comments below. So everyone, if you would love to see a physio, Caitlinn's more than happy to look after you.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening in, guys. If you're on Apple, please leave a 5-star written review. If you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. All right, I'll see you next week with the next inspiring story.